The Voss mansion stood like a museum. Glass walls, marble floors, silence wrapped in wealth. Everything gleamed, but nothing breathed. Nathan Voss, once the golden boy of biotech, now lived in that stillness with a daughter who didn't speak and didn't walk. Ava sat by the floor-to-ceiling window in her soft gray pajamas, legs limp, hands folded in her lap. Every day at exactly 9 a.m., she stared at the garden. Not playing, not reading, just watching. Nathan paced behind her. He'd long given up trying to coax her into therapy sessions. "We've tried every specialist," he murmured to himself, pouring another untouched espresso down the sink. His phone buzzed. A new nanny had arrived. Rosa. He expected someone older, maybe with bright energy, but Rosa was quiet, mid-30s, wrapped in a simple beige coat, her dark hair tied back. She barely looked at him when he opened the door. "You're Mr. Voss?" she asked softly, more like a statement than a question. He frowned. "You're early." She only nodded and stepped inside. He led her down the sleek hallway. "My daughter doesn't speak. She doesn't walk. If you're here thinking this is just about babysitting, I understand," she said, calmly. No curiosity in her voice, no false hope, just calm. Ava didn't turn when Rosa entered the room. She remained as still as ever, eyes fixed on something only she could see. Rosa stood behind her for a moment, then slowly sat on the floor, cross-legged, close but not too close. No words. No introductions, just silence. Nathan watched from the hallway camera. Rosa didn't touch Ava, didn't speak to her. She simply sat, letting the morning pass beside her. Hours went by. At 6:02 p.m., Rosa stood and left without a word. Ava blinked for the first time in hours. That night, Nathan asked his daughter, as he did every night, "Are you okay, baby?" As always, no reply. But her fingers resting on the armrest twitched, almost imperceptibly. He didn't sleep. Neither did Ava. The next morning, Rosa returned. She wore the same coat, brought no bag, said nothing. But this time, she walked into the room and sat facing Ava, mimicking her posture exactly. Ava glanced at her, just a flick of the eye, and then looked away again. By evening, Rosa placed a small paper crane on the table beside Ava. No explanation. When Nathan entered, he saw it, noticed how Ava's fingers now hovered near it. He looked at Rosa. She never reacts, not even with the last nanny. "What did you do?" Rosa tilted her head slightly. "Nothing yet. But she's watching." Nathan didn't reply, but he didn't fire her either. For the first time in weeks, something unspoken settled between the walls of that cold, lifeless house. Something small, but alive. And Ava, still unmoving, watched Rosa walk away. This time, not from the window. Nathan sat in his office, the security feed blinking across 3 monitors. He hated that it had come to this. But trust wasn't something he handed out anymore. Not after the last nanny had left crying in the middle of the night without even collecting her final paycheck. The footage had revealed nothing. Just silence. Always silence. This time, he was prepared. Rosa moved like a shadow through the house. She never raised her voice, never touched Ava without warning, and never tried to force interaction. Instead, she hummed softly while tidying. She folded towels with care, made herbal tea for herself without touching the wine rack, and sat beside Ava each day just as she had the first. Present but never intrusive, Ava didn't speak, didn't walk. But Nathan noticed something strange. By the end of the 3rd night, Ava had started to hum, faintly, barely audible through the hallway's heavy silence. But Nathan knew that melody. His heart stopped the moment he heard it echo through the baby monitor. It was Lily's lullaby. His late wife's voice had sung it every night before the accident. A simple tune, French, gentle, drifting. Something she'd learned from her grandmother. Nathan hadn't heard it since the night Lily died. Ava had never once repeated it. Now she hummed it in her sleep. Nathan leaned forward, rewinding the tape. Rosa had never hummed that song, not once. But Ava had, quietly, as if drawn to it from the memory of a memory. The next morning, Rosa entered the room at her usual time. Nathan watched closely. She didn't speak to Ava. Instead, she set down a small music box near her chair, old-fashioned, scratched, and slightly out of tune. Ava glanced at it. Rosa wound it once. It clicked softly, and the familiar melody spilled out. Broken and delicate, Ava's eyes blinked fast, faster than normal. Nathan's throat tightened. He walked to the room, standing just behind the doorway. Rosa didn't look up. She just whispered. She remembers something, not everything, but something. Nathan's voice was sharp. Where did you get that box? Rosa turned. I didn't bring it. It was in the attic, with Lily's things. Nathan hadn't been in that attic in years. Ava shifted slightly in her chair. Her fingers reached for the music box, slow and deliberate. Not by accident, not random. He didn't say a word. That night, he sat alone with the footage, watching frame by frame, Rosa, silent, Ava, still. But humming, the cameras showed no tricks, no manipulation. And yet, something had shifted. Nathan couldn't help but wonder if grief had a language that only children and strangers could understand. Nathan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, eyes locked on the timestamp. 2:13 p.m. to 3-hour p.m., exactly 47 minutes of dead static. No sound, no visual, nothing but a soft hiss across every feed from the house's internal surveillance system. He blinked, replayed it. Same result, clean cut. Like someone had pressed pause on time. He buzzed Rosa from the intercom. She came calmly, wiping soil from her hands. Yes, Mr. Voss? His voice was flat. Why was the camera feed down yesterday? She didn't flinch. I took Ava outside, to the garden, just for air. You didn't ask, he said. I didn't think she needed permission to breathe, Rosa replied, gently. Nathan stared at her. That garden had been sealed off since Lily died. Wild vines, broken statues, dry soil. It wasn't a place for children. And yet later that evening, Ava did something she hadn't in 6 years. She smiled. It wasn't wide. It didn't last. But it was real. A small upward curve as she sat at the dining table, picking at peas with her fingers. Nathan had been adjusting his cufflinks when he saw it. He froze, watching her mouth twitch upward at something Rosa whispered under her breath. The next day, at the exact same time, 2:13 p.m., Nathan waited by the monitor. At first, everything seemed normal. Ava eating lunch, Rosa beside her, but then, right on cue, the feed fractured, static, again, for 47 minutes. Nathan's pulse quickened. He reviewed the wiring, checked the server logs, no errors, no power surges. Everything was intact, except the footage. He confronted Rosa a second time, angrier now. What are you doing out there? I'm helping her remember, she said. Remember what? Rosa simply met his eyes. That she's not trapped here. Nathan didn't know what that meant. He never had time for metaphors. That night, he stood in Ava's doorway longer than usual. She was asleep, one hand curled around something small. He stepped closer. A leaf, curled and pressed between her fingers. A leaf from the garden. The next morning, the gardener reported something strange. One of the old statues, the broken angel, near the fountain, had been cleaned. Not professionally, just enough for the face to show again. It looked peaceful. Nathan didn't know what disturbed him more, the missing footage, or the fact that Ava had stopped humming and started whispering to Rosa. Only Rosa. "What is she saying to you?" he asked. "She's remembering dreams," Rosa said. "Ones she used to have when her mother was still alive." Nathan wanted to dismiss it, call it manipulation, emotional games, but when he saw Ava sketching in crayon the next day, a crude image of the garden and a faceless statue, he felt something shift in his chest. Control was slipping, but so was the silence. Nathan noticed it just past the sunlit hallway, faint but unmistakable. A small footprint pressed lightly into the marble tile outlined in damp earth. The tread was delicate, slender, not from his shoes, nor Rosa's, and certainly not from Ava's orthopedic pair, which sat untouched beneath the coat rack. He crouched slowly, eyes narrowing. Muddy. Fresh. He turned toward the security monitor. Again. Static, 2:13 to 3. Again. Downstairs, Rosa was humming, the same unfamiliar tune Ava had picked up. It drifted through the walls like smoke. Nathan descended the stairs with silent urgency, the image of the footprint still fresh in his mind. He found Rosa folding towels beside the linen closet, calm as ever. He didn't waste time. "There's a footprint in the hall," he said, "and Ava's shoes haven't moved." Rosa didn't look up. "Then maybe she wasn't wearing them." "She can't walk," he snapped. Now she met his gaze. Soft, unshaken. "Maybe Ava's stronger than you think." Nathan's lips parted, then closed. There were questions he could ask, should ask, but he couldn't form them. Instead, he turned and climbed back upstairs. That night, Ava slept with her arms tucked beneath her chin, knees curled toward her chest like she hadn't done in years. Nathan stood in the doorway again, watching her lips move gently in sleep. One word, "Mama." He stepped closer. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Her fingers twitched, a rhythm like drumming, or counting. He retreated slowly, pulling the door shut without sound. In his study, he opened an old drawer. Inside lay a faded photograph, Lily holding infant Ava. That same garden in the background. The broken angel statue behind them now cleaned. Nathan hadn't looked at this photo in years. Guilt wrapped itself like a fist around his throat. He had built this mansion to erase pain, not heal it. Later that morning, Rosa asked for fresh art supplies. "Ava wants to paint," she said. Nathan nodded, distracted. But something in Rosa's tone held meaning, like the brush strokes weren't for color but for memory. When he passed the hallway again that afternoon, the footprint was gone. Cleaned. But something else was left behind, a single shoe, small, pink, lightly scuffed. Not one of Ava's orthopedics, but a different pair. From years ago, he recognized it. It had belonged to Ava before she stopped walking. It had been boxed away after Lily's funeral, and now it lay in the open, a whisper in cotton and rubber. That evening, Ava did something new. She looked him in, the eye, directly, fully, and said, "Can Rosa stay?" It wasn't just a question. It was a boundary, a claim. Nathan answered before thinking. Yes. But inside he felt the walls beginning to bend. Not break, not yet, but bend. Nathan froze in the doorway, unable to speak. There in the center of the room he hadn't entered since Lily's death, stood Ava. Her small legs trembled beneath her, her balance uneven, arms spread slightly for support. But she was upright, standing. Before her hung a canvas, one Lily had never finished. A splash of reds and muted violets, half blurred like a memory lost mid-thought. Ava reached out slowly, tracing a finger along the edge of the painting. Her hand lingered on a corner, where Lily's initials were faint but visible. Nathan stepped forward. Ava? Her head turned. Her eyes didn't show surprise or fear, just quiet understanding, as if she'd known he would come eventually. Then her knees gave slightly. He rushed forward, catching her under the arms before she could fall. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But she leaned into him, forehead resting against his collarbone, her breath shallow and warm. He carried her to the armchair beside the window, the one Lily used to sit in while watching the storms. The air in the room was thick with scent. Old oils, dust, and faint lilac. Rosa appeared behind him, her voice soft. "She's been coming here for days," she said. "Only when you're not home." Nathan looked up. "How?" "She walks when you're not looking," Rosa said simply. "But only when she feels safe." Nathan's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because she didn't want you to know yet." There was no judgment in Rosa's voice, just a quiet knowing, a tone Nathan didn't know how to respond to. He looked back at Ava, now thumbing through one of Lily's old sketchbooks. Page by page, images of their old life surfaced. Laughing, poses, crayon doodles beside charcoal studies. Ava smiled faintly. Nathan sat beside her, stunned. "How long?" he asked. "A week," Rosa said. "Maybe more. But the strength to move doesn't come from the legs. Not for her." A silence filled the room. Not empty, but sacred. The kind of silence that listens. Later, Rosa tucked Ava into bed, and Nathan stood alone in the studio. He reached up and touched the same canvas Ava had reached for. The brush stroke under his finger was dry, cracked, unfinished. But something about the room felt different now, not healed, but breathing again. Tomorrow, he would remove the dust cloth from Lily's easel, and maybe, just maybe, he'd ask Rosa to teach him how to stay still long enough to watch his daughter move. The envelope was thick, official, sealed with the pediatrician's crest. Nathan had come home early, intending to apologize. Not for anything specific, just an ache he couldn't name. But as he passed Rosa's room, the door was cracked, and the envelope was there, half tucked beneath her worn journal. His name was on it. He picked it up. The seal wasn't broken. Back. In his study, he sliced it open, expecting routine medical jargon. Instead, he found words that made his palms go numb. Diagnosis: conversion disorder, psychogenic paralysis. Root cause: likely traumatic stress response. Recommend therapeutic reintroduction of mobility, not physical intervention. Nathan stared at the paper. The edges of the room seemed to blur, so it wasn't physical, not some unsolvable medical mystery. It was trauma, and Rosa knew. She had hidden this. His hands tightened, crumpling the page. Rosa was in the kitchen when he confronted her. She didn't raise her voice. "I didn't tell you," she said, "because you weren't ready to hear it." "I'm her father," he snapped. "You don't get to decide what I'm ready for." Rosa's eyes didn't waver. "And yet, she walked. With me. Not with you." The silence between them cracked like ice. "Pack your things," he said, coldly. "You're done." Rosa didn't argue. She simply removed her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. Upstairs, Ava's bedroom door was closed. Rosa paused before it, then walked away. That night, the house felt colder than it ever had. Nathan poured himself a drink, staring at the darkened garden, the place where Ava had first smiled again. He didn't notice the time, or the wind outside. But what he did hear, what jolted him from his daze, was the scream, high-pitched, shattering. Ava's. He ran. She was thrashing in bed, her hands clawing at the sheets, her mouth wide open in silent terror, even after the scream ended. "Ava! Ava!" He gathered her in his arms, helpless. Her eyes fluttered, then locked onto his. She wasn't fully awake, but she was trembling. Mama? No, please. He froze. It was the first full sentence she'd spoken in months. Nathan sat on the floor beside her bed, clutching her to his chest, her tears soaking his shirt, and all he could think was, what have I done? In the hallway, the shadow of the easel stood still, canvas untouched, and the report, now smooth and refolded, lay back on his desk, unread again, officially. The next morning, Nathan couldn't bring himself to face Ava. He sat in his study, fingers steepled, the pediatrician's report unfolded in front of him. His glass of scotch remained untouched. For once, he didn't want to numb the truth. Instead, he opened the drawer. Buried under contracts and old bills was a small black hard drive. One of the early backups from the hallway camera system, the kind he'd installed himself before the security upgrade. A paranoid habit from the early days after his wife's death. He plugged it in. Click. The folder blinked open. Date stamps from weeks ago. The file titles were nondescript, just time codes. He clicked one. In the living room, lit by soft morning light, Rosa stood barefoot, humming a melody he didn't recognize. Her hips moved gently, arms out like a child playing. It wasn't dancing, not really. More like movement softened by emotion. On the rug nearby, Ava sat, knees curled to her chest. Nathan fast-forwarded, then paused. Ava was standing, wobbling slightly, arms outstretched, mirroring Rosa. He leaned forward, hit rewind, played again, slower. It was unmistakable. Ava, silent, steadying herself by the coffee table, then lifting one foot, then another. 3 steps, 3 impossible steps. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He played the file again, then another. In one, Rosa and Ava were lying on the floor, giggling silently, drawing with markers on the hardwood. Ava's legs were outstretched, kicking the air, not limp, not frozen. In another, Ava climbed, yes, climbed, onto the couch, and curled into Rosa's lap. Nathan sat back, stunned. He'd never seen Ava that free, that safe. Not with him. He clicked on one final file, dated 2 days before he fired Rosa. In the video, Rosa is in the kitchen, slicing fruit. Ava enters, upright, holding a stuffed rabbit. She walks up behind Rosa and tugs at her sleeve. Rosa turns, smiles. Ava says something, but the footage has no audio. Still, Nathan could read her lips. Will Daddy be mad? Rosa kneels, mouths something back. Ava nods, and then she walks away, calmly, confidently. Nathan paused the footage. Ava had walked, spoken, smiled, and he hadn't known. He'd been too busy controlling everything, monitoring, suspecting, too afraid of ghosts, to see his daughter trying to live again. Nathan closed the laptop. Upstairs he heard footsteps, soft, dragging, not running, but footsteps all the same. He stood slowly, a strange new weight forming in his chest. Not guilt, not yet, but something heavier, understanding. Down the hallway, Ava's door creaked open. He didn't move toward it, he waited, because maybe for once, she needed to come to him, not the other way around. 3 mornings after Nathan watched the footage, something strange appeared in the mailbox. A plain white envelope, scrawled with shaky, colorful handwriting. It was addressed to Ava Voss. No stamp. No return address. Just a sun sticker on the back. Nathan held it for a long moment, his hand trembling slightly. No one wrote to Ava. No one even knew she had a last name besides the hospital and the house staff, both sworn to silence. He brought it inside, sat on the edge of her bed, and offered it to her. Ava didn't speak. She hadn't since Rosa left. But her eyes flicked toward the envelope. Then away. I think it's for you, Nathan said softly. She didn't reach for it. He opened it for her. Inside was a folded piece of construction paper, the kind you'd find in kindergarten craft bins. On it were clumsy crayon drawings, a little girl with short hair and a stuffed rabbit in one hand, a pair of footprints, a sun in the corner, and beside the girl, a larger figure drawn entirely in gray, labeled simply Rose. No signature, but Ava's bottom lip trembled. Nathan read the inside silently. When you're scared, close your eyes and remember your legs are just sleeping. And I'll always be your shadow. R. He looked at his daughter. She was staring at the drawing, hands clenched. That night, she didn't eat. The next morning, she refused her favorite cereal. By the third day, she wouldn't come out of her room. Nathan tried everything, toys, music, even offering to visit the park. But Ava only sat by the window, knees tucked to her chest, holding the letter. It was the first time she'd clung to anything since her mother died. And now, she was slipping back into silence. Nathan sat outside her room that evening, eyes closed against the dark wood door, trying to breathe. He had taken Rosa away, because she hid a report, because she made him feel powerless, because she made Ava feel something he hadn't. Loved, safe, capable. He opened his phone, found the nanny agency's number and hovered over it, then deleted it. He didn't need a replacement. He needed her. But Rosa had vanished. No forwarding address, no social media, no contact with the agency, just a shadow in a child's drawing, and a name Ava now whispered in her sleep. Rose. Nathan pressed his palm to the door, listening. Inside, Ava began humming again. The same song, and her voice cracked. She left. The door stayed closed, but the silence had broken. Nathan sat in his study long after midnight, Ava's untouched. Dinner still on the tray beside him. The house was so quiet it throbbed in his ears. His hands moved aimlessly, sorting, shredding, organizing clutter that didn't need attention. That's when he found her phone. His late wife's old rose gold iPhone tucked in the back of a drawer he hadn't opened in years. The battery was dead. The screen cracked. He stared at it like a relic from another life. He plugged it in. The screen blinked to life. Dozens of apps updated. Most were irrelevant. Shopping lists, old voicemails from friends. He almost shut it off until he saw it. One voice memo, dated 2 days before she died, titled simply, "For Nathan." He hesitated, then hit play. Her voice poured into the room, softer than he remembered, but firm. "If anything happens to me, don't let Ava live in silence. She'll need someone, not you." Nathan's breath caught. "I love you, but you're cold in ways you don't see. She'll need warmth. She'll need touch. She'll need someone who believes in the things you call foolish. Music, laughter, dancing barefoot." The pause was long. "Promise me you'll let someone in, even if she doesn't come from our world, even if it hurts your pride." Nathan's hand trembled. "Don't raise her like glass. She's flesh, Nathan. She's feeling, and she'll remember." The message ended. He sat still for a long time, then played it again. The timing haunted him. 2 days before she drowned in their lake. Alone. No witnesses. Ruling. Accidental. But now, he wondered. He rose from the desk and walked slowly to Ava's room. She was asleep, curled around the letter from Rosa. For the first time, he saw the tightness in her body, the way her jaw clenched even in dreams. She was surviving, not living, just like her mother had feared. He tucked the blanket around her, softer than he ever had before, then turned to leave, but stopped. The moonlight hit the corner of the room. There, on the bookshelf, was a photo he hadn't noticed in years. His wife holding baby Ava, both laughing barefoot in the grass. Nathan swallowed hard. She'd warned him, and he had failed. He needed to find Rosa. Not as a father desperate for answers, but as a man finally listening to the ghost of the woman he once loved. The house was still wrapped in the blue hush of early dawn when Nathan stirred from restless sleep. No nanny, no plans, just silence. But something pulled him from bed, a flicker of movement beyond the curtains. He padded barefoot across the cold marble floor, heart inexplicably racing. The curtains were half drawn, the garden beyond still damp with morning dew. And then he saw her, Ava, standing barefoot in the middle of the garden, not moving. Just breathing. Nathan froze, gripping the window frame like a lifeline. His daughter, who hadn't taken a single step for 6 years, was upright, alone, unassisted. She wasn't reaching for anything. She wasn't struggling. She was watching the sunrise. Her silhouette was backlit by gold and soft orange hues, the kind of light his wife once loved to paint. He bolted outside. His footsteps echoed through the wet grass, frantic. "Ava!" he choked. She didn't flinch. She turned to him calmly. Her long hair was tangled, cheeks flushed from the chill. But her eyes, they were clear, awake. Nathan dropped to his knees in front of her, trembling. How are you, Ava?" Tilted her head slightly. "Rosa said I didn't have to be scared anymore." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cracked something inside him. Nathan felt it. The dam breaking, the guilt, the years, all rising. Tears ran down his face. He couldn't stop them. Not this time. He reached out slowly, afraid to touch her, afraid to shatter whatever miracle this was. But Ava didn't step back. Instead, she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. She was real, solid, warm. He wept into her shoulder. The gardener watched from a distance, rooted by the fence, unsure whether to step in. He didn't. Inside the house, the silence felt different. No longer heavy, just full. Nathan carried Ava back inside, cradled like something sacred. She smiled. For the first time in years, he smiled back. Not as the billionaire who built walls from grief, but as a father seeing his daughter, really seeing her, walk into her own light. Nathan sat at his desk, the morning sun now fully risen, casting long shadows across the floor. Ava was upstairs resting peacefully, her first nap without nightmares in months. But Nathan couldn't rest. He opened his laptop, pulling up the agency records. The nanny roster didn't list anyone named Rosa. He refreshed. Logged in again. Still, nothing. He checked his emails. The original hiring thread, gone. He scrolled through sent messages. Nothing. No interview notes. No replies, just a strange blank space between the day Ava started humming and the day she stood on her own. He opened his bank app. The check he'd written? Never cashed. He called the agency. "This is Nathan Voss. I need to speak to whoever. Placed our last nanny, Rosa." A pause. Then a woman's voice. "Sir, we haven't placed anyone with your household in over 10 months. No one named Rosa has ever worked under our agency." His throat tightened. "But I interviewed her. I have footage. Wait." He reached for the security drive, inserted it. The folders were intact, dates correct. But the clips? Gone. Only static remained in the window between Ava's silence and Ava's voice. He checked his phone. The photo of Rosa pushing Ava on the garden swing, gone. He stood slowly, the silence of the house pressing against his ears. He walked to the guest room. It was empty. The bed was untouched, as if no one had ever slept there. He opened the closet. Nothing. Not a scent. Not a trace of hair. It was as though Rosa had never existed, but Ava had changed, and that couldn't be denied. Nathan returned to the garden where he first saw Ava standing. By the rose bushes, something glimmered. Half buried beneath the soil was a child's drawing, faded from dew. A stick-figure girl holding hands with a taller figure labeled Rose! Not Rosa, just Rose. He stared at it, heart pounding. Rosa. Rose. Was she someone real, or someone Ava needed? The wind stirred the trees gently as if answering, a question he hadn't yet asked. He didn't speak. He just stood there, breathing, still, listening, wondering who had saved his daughter, and why she chose to disappear. The fireplace crackled softly in the marble-lined parlor, casting flickers of gold across the cold, sterile walls. But above the mantel now hung something utterly human. A crayon drawing on folded white paper, taped, carefully at the corners. Ava had drawn it that morning. Two figures held her hands. One was her mother, tall, with yellow hair and a soft smile. The other was labeled in shaky letters, Rosa. A small flower bloomed from Rosa's drawn dress. All three stood beneath a sun with long, dancing rays. Nathan had stared at it for minutes before silently pinning it above the fire. Later, Ava came down in socks and pajamas, walking carefully on her own. No braces, no assistance. She paused by the hearth. "You believe me now?" she asked, her voice light, her eyes unreadable. Nathan knelt beside her. "I do," he said, "even if no one else saw her?" "Yes." She looked up at the drawing, her fingers grazing the corner. "She said Mama missed me, but it wasn't my fault." Nathan's breath caught. It never was. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of forgiveness, of things unspoken and finally understood. He didn't ask how Ava knew things he never told her. Didn't ask how she'd drawn her mother's necklace perfectly, or why Rosa always smelled faintly of lavender, just like his late wife had. Some things, he realized, aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be felt. As night fell, Ava curled up on the couch beside him, a blanket pulled to her chin. Outside, snowflakes began to drift. Nathan glanced once more at the drawing, at the quiet impossibility of it. A nanny who had no record, who came and left without a trace, but somehow left behind everything that mattered. He smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you, Rosa." Soft gust of wind passed through the chimney, stirring the flames just slightly, like breath, and for the first time in years the house didn't feel cold. It felt like home,